Are you ready?
Yeah,
I'm ready. Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Hyeyeon, a doctorate in educational psychology program at Penn State. This is Dr. Jeffrey Greene and a professor in University of North Carolina, and also he's my mentor in SSRL. So it's a pleasure to have you with us today. We have 3 questions for you today. So our first question is, could you tell us about yourself, like your name, institution, academic rank, and service you're doing for your universities, or like some genres?
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. So my name's Jeff Greene. I'm a professor of educational psychology and the learning sciences here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the School of Education. I'm also Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Director of Graduate Studies at the moment. And my research involves a number of different constructs, all related to how people learn with technology and how to help them do that more effectively. And obviously, self-regulated learning is a key part of learning with technology. There's lots of distractions and complexity in learning with technology. And so students that are able to self-regulate more effectively are more likely to learn better and quicker. And more deeply using technology. In addition, I study things like epistemic cognition and other aspects of cognitive psychology and learning.
Thanks for sharing. You mentioned about like a kind of like your research, the work. So which is particular aspects of like some digital literacy, like such as student cognition, regulation, and beliefs across the domains. And as I know, you are also doing kind of like a classroom discourse research. Mm-hmm. So could you explain more about like your research and what are you currently working on? Who's your collaborator? And
mm-hmm. Sure. So I have a number of collaborators. As you mentioned, I've done quite a bit of work on classroom discourse with Karen Murphy at Penn State University. And Carla Freddo at Arizona State University. And we've really studied how students in small groups engage in discourse and how that discourse relates to argumentation and epistemic cognition and the ways in which they can learn in literacy classrooms as well as high school science classrooms. A lot of my work with digital technologies involves self-regulated learning. I've had a number of collaborators over the year. Of course, my mentor, Roger Azevedo, and I've done a lot of work together and continue to do so. Dan Moose and Jennifer Cromley and other folks were really formative in helping me better understand what digital technology learning can be and could be and how we can better understand it. At the moment, I'm doing quite a bit of research with Matt Bernanke here at the University of North Carolina, and we are studying how students in large introductory science classes use digital technology to learn and how we can leverage the data that they naturally create in the course via learning management systems and other kinds of technologies to understand their learning and help them learn more effectively and succeed in the class. And so Matt has some really compelling research showing that the ways in which students do and do not interact with the technology can actually predict their subsequent performance in the course and can do so after 3 or 4 weeks. So you can imagine how it'd be really helpful to try to identify students who are more or less likely to succeed in the class very early on in the class and then intervene. And our research project, which was funded by the National Science Foundation, is to develop those models to identify students and then provide them with different kinds of interventions with the hope that those interventions will kind of change their trajectory. So the students we might predict to struggle in the course, we can catch them early enough that we can change how they learn or help them change how they learn, and then hopefully help them get a better grade in the class so they don't have to retake it or get behind, that kind of thing. I think the other project that is at the front of my mind at the moment is a project funded by the Spencer Foundation, where we're looking at ego depletion. So ego depletion is kind of a controversial topic at the moment in the field, but there's lots of research to suggest that people have a certain amount of energy that they can devote to self-regulation, and the more they are asked to tap that energy, kind of the harder it gets. I don't know if the energy ever runs out, but the more you're asked to self-regulate, the harder it is to keep self-regulating. And so we have an experimental study where we actually intentionally depleted some people. We asked them to do something that we thought would take a lot of self-regulatory processing, And then we had another group of students who we didn't ask to do that. They did something different. And we're comparing how they subsequently learn online and their knowledge gains to see whether or not the ego depletion effect can be seen in both how they self-regulate and how successfully they learn material.
Wow, that's really awesome. You have lots of contribution to educational psychology field. So this is the last question. And could you provide 3 tips for graduate students about how to become productive educational researchers?
Sure. I suspect the easy answer is to read a lot, right? So you have to really know the field. People talk about the field as being kind of like a conversation, and the journals illustrate that conversation. And, you know, just like when you're at a party and you walk up to a group of people who are having a conversation, you don't just start talking about whatever you want to talk about. You kind of listen to the conversation, you try to get a sense of what they're talking about, and then you try to add to it. So reading a lot in the field helps you understand the conversation in the field and know how you can add to it. I think another thing that's really important, and it could just be because I study this, but I think self-regulation when making contributions to the field and being productive is really important. You know, being a scholar and coming up with new ideas and writing are all really pretty tiring. I mean, they're physically tiring activities. It's not just mentally tiring, it's physically tiring. And so I really encourage my students to take care of themselves. I think it's easy to think you have to work 80 hours a week and you can't do anything but read and write and do research. But I think the reality is that you've got to be well rested and you've got to have some energy available to you when you sit down to read, or when you sit down to start writing, or when you sit down to come up with a new research idea. And so I really encourage pacing and really studying how you engage in scholarship so that you understand it and can self-regulate it accordingly. So there's a phrase out there, is research is me-search. And so perhaps I'm really interested in it because I study self-regulation, but I do think it's really important for folks to think carefully about when do I work best and how can I be at my most optimal level of energy and engagement at that time. Mm-hmm. And that requires rest. And it requires kind of physical and mental health to do that. And so I really encourage people to do that. You know, you look at studies of expert writers, and expert writers generally don't write for 8 hours straight. They tend to write a couple hours and then take a big break, and maybe a couple more hours and take a big break, and then kind of stop. I mean, most professional writers don't write more than 3, 4, 5 hours a day, but they do it every day. And they make that a primary focus of their day. And so they ensure they have enough energy for it, that they've set aside time for it, that they're not distracted during it. Mm-hmm. And that they try to be productive during that time, and then they stop and do something else. And so I encourage folks to think about it that way. Set a time to write, protect that time every day, or as many days as you can. And when you come to that time, try to be well rested and try to be in a positive mental space so that you can make the most of that time.
Yeah, these are so really good, and I should definitely take it these 3 tips for my a successful academic journey. And I really appreciate on your time and help on this. And thanks everyone, and hope you enjoy this interview.
Thank you. Bye bye.